explore how you can be fully alive, becoming the man God intended. This is On Target with founder Vince D'Acchioli.
Hello, man. Welcome, and how you doing? Welcome to On Target. In the last show, you may recall we dealt with the importance of understanding my responsibility as a follower of Jesus and the proper response I am to have if I'm really going to make a difference for Jesus in the world around me. In this show, we're going to be dealing with my attitude and actions. Do I have the proper attitude? And what would my actions suggest to people who are observing them in the world around me? And we're going to end with discussing what is my motive. In all human interaction, we're told that you're either ministering or you are manipulating. So let's get right to it.
Now, a teaching from the Men on Target small group curriculum.
In our last session, we talked about the importance of adopting behavior that lights up and how critical it is for us to be Jesus to a dying world. And in this session, session 23, we're going to be talking about my attitude and my actions. And this is very, very important. I'm going to share some stories from my own life of places where I made some mistakes in this area, and I don't want you to fall into that same trap. So here we go. In the first area, I want to talk about how important it is to develop a healthy attitude toward others. In psychology, there's something called the Pygmalion effect. The Pygmalion effect suggests that my attitude and my assumption about people, places, and things can actually be the reasons why they are the way they are. Let me give you an example. If I've got somebody working for me and I'm observing them and I look at them and I say to myself, there's no way that guy's going to make it here. What the Pygmalion effect suggests is that I will unconsciously do stuff that will subvert that guy's ability to make it in the workplace. I'm unconsciously doing it. They did a test one time back in the 40s with about 20 school kids that are about the 8th grade level. They tested and discovered 5 of them were gifted learners. And they identified these gifted learners to the teacher and gave her the class for the whole year. They didn't have a gifted learner program back then. And after the year was over, they retested all 20 of the kids, and the original test was validated. In fact, these 5 kids, after a full year in class, were about 20-30% higher in everything that they had learned that year from the rest of the kids. Then they broke the news to the teacher. You see, they never tested any of the kids in the first place. They simply picked 5 kids at random and told the teacher they were gifted. I sometimes get emotional when I share that story because I think to myself, gee, I wonder what it would be like if every kid was believed by every teacher to be gifted. That's the Pygmalion effect. Years ago, I didn't have such a healthy attitude. I was asked to be on the Human Relations Commission in the city that I lived in, and I was like a bull in a china shop. There were a lot of people who didn't think the way I did, and there were some very liberal folks on here that hated Christians and didn't want anything to do with Christianity. And I had one man in particular that said something in front of me, because I was really a bull in a china shop. I was very, very tough. Verbally, I would abuse people and get mad at them. Well, this guy said something in front of me to another person who was a Christian, belittling this person's organization. It's a nationally known organization. If I named it, you'd know who it was. He made a statement, and I said, he said it in front of me. In those days, that was the equivalent of bleeding in front of a shark. I turned to this guy and I said, please repeat that. And he repeated it. The guy was a lawyer. I said, you're a lawyer, right? He said, yes. Give me the body of evidence that you've uncovered to bring you to such an incredible statement, please. His lower lip started to quiver. He was angry, and you could tell he was really upset. He couldn't think of anything. He had nothing he could give me that would cause him to make such an incredible statement. And I proceeded to take that man apart verbally, limb from limb. I said, you're a lawyer? How could you call yourself a lawyer? You are pathetic. I mean, I just really ridiculed this guy. Okay? And I did many such things, and I really liked it. Okay? But you know what I'm about to say. What I'm about to say is, listen, can you imagine that guy, after I got done with him, going up and saying, boy, I can't wait to go to that guy Vince's church and find out more about Jesus. Listen, guys, it doesn't work that way. I was speaking to a group of pastors one day. They were battling out something in the op-ed section of the newspaper, and it was ridiculous. It was a dumb thing. And I said, why are you doing this? What hill do you want to die on? Here's a simple question I like all of us to remember. Before you do or say anything, here's a question you should ask yourself. Is what I am about to do more likely to draw people toward Jesus or push them further away? If it can stand the test of that question, then I think we're in a much better place to be Jesus. Luke 6:27-28. You are to love, but to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies. Jesus wouldn't have said love your enemies if you weren't going to have any, guys. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. What should I have done with that guy? I probably should have taken him to lunch, got to know him, got to know a little bit about his background. He didn't come to his conclusions overnight, and just loved on him. That's what Jesus would do. Look what the Apostle Paul did. Everybody knows the story in Acts 16:23-30. Here's what it says. After they'd been severely flogged, they were thrown into prison, and the jailer was commanded to guard them carefully. When he received these orders, he put them in the inner cell and fastened their feet in the stocks. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and obviously the jailer was witnessing all this. And the other prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly there was such a violent earthquake that the foundations of the prison were shaken. At once the prison doors flew open and everyone's chains came loose. The jailer woke up. When he saw the prison doors open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself. Why? Well, because in those days, had the prisoners escaped, he would have been put to death, but he probably would have been tortured first. So he's thinking, I'm just going to get it over with, because he thought the prisoners had escaped. But Paul shouted, hey, don't harm yourself. We're all here. What does it say? The jailer called for lights, rushed in and fell trembling before Paul and Silas, and he brought them out and asked, sirs, what must I do to be saved? Why? Why did he ask that question? Because he saw something in Paul and Silas that confounded him. And guys, listen, that's what people need to see in you and I. We are called, listen, to live a life that demands an explanation. That's what we're called to do. And we've got to remember that. That guard, by the way, his whole family, if you continue to read that story, ended up coming to Jesus, all because he observed something in Paul and Silas. And that's what people need to do with us, guys. Why is this so important? Well, look at 1 Corinthians 2:14. It's important because it says, the man without the Spirit does not accept the things that come from the Spirit of God. Okay, why? For they are foolishness to him. He cannot understand them because they are spiritually discerned. But remember now, attitude always follows behavior. Psychologists will tell you that. I love it when psychologists agree with the Bible, by the way, because look at what it says in Proverbs 16:3. It says, commit your works to the Lord, in other words, my behavior, and your thoughts or attitude will be established. This is kind of like what the Pygmalion effect is really all about. As I commit my works to the Lord, as I deliberately do things the right way, I'll have more of a proper attitude. And finally, get out of your comfort zone. Years ago, there was a guy named Larry Walters. This is kind of a funny story. And Larry Walters is affectionately known as the lawn chair pilot. He was blind. He couldn't get a pilot's license, so he decided one day to do something really pretty crazy. He got this lawn chair and he got a bunch of balloons, helium balloons. This is a true story. It happened in L.A. And he had these balloons 300 or 400 feet into the air. He thought he'd sit in his lawn chair with a BB gun, and when the balloons would get inflated, he would release the lawn chair and he'd float up in the sky, and he can control his ascent and descent by shooting out the balloons if he goes too high, right? Well, I guess it's a fun thing to do when you've got nothing better to do, right? So he sits in his lawn chair and he releases it, and he grossly underestimates the power of these 40 helium balloons. And before he knows it, Larry is floating 16,000 feet above the skyline in Los Angeles. He's frozen in his chair. He doesn't know what to do. And so he's out there floating around, and he accidentally floats into the landing pattern for Los Angeles International Airport. So here comes a TWA pilot on approach. He's having a normal day. He sees Larry up there. He calls the tower. They got this on tape. And the tower, he says, hey, you guys aren't going to believe this. There's a guy up here at 16,000 feet in a chair with a gun. And they said, what? He said, yeah. They got the helicopters out, and they got the guy down. Finally, they got him down safely. They got him handcuffed. He's on the news that night, and he's walking away. And the guy says, were you scared? He says, yes. He said, would you ever do that again? The guy says, no. He said, well, whatever prompted you to do that in the first place? Listen to what he said. Sometimes you can't just sit around. Now, I'm not suggesting that's the way you get out of your comfort zone. But look at this, Numbers 32, 1-7. The Reubenites and Gadites, who had very large herds and flocks, saw that the lands of Jazer and Gilead were suitable for livestock. So they came to Moses and Eleazar the priest and to the leaders of the community and said, hey, all you guys, that's my translation because I can't pronounce any of those names. The land the Lord subdued before the people of Israel are suitable for livestock. So watch the logic here. And your servants, after all, have livestock. So if we have found favor in your eyes, let this land be given to your servants as our possession. Do not make us cross the Jordan. Moses said to the Gadites and Reubenites, should your countrymen go to war? Israelites go to war without you? Why do you discourage the Israelites from crossing over into the land the Lord has given them? And you remember the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. You know, I wonder how that would go if it were to happen today. That little boy, the loaves and fishes, comes to Jesus and said, we should feed these people. And Jesus says, what do you got there, little boy? He says, I just have a few loaves and fishes. And Jesus says, let's just give them that. And I can imagine today, if that would have happened, that little boy would just laugh and say, ha, you got a plan plan B, Jesus, because I obviously don't have what it takes here. You know, and listen, what Jesus is saying to us, guys, listen carefully. God is not looking for your ability. He's looking for your obedience. That's what we have to consider. So the important thing, guys, look, we need to go light up our world. It's very important that we be Jesus and we get out of our comfort zone and step out there, and the Lord will help you. Life implication? Unless I have a healthy attitude toward others, I may stifle their understanding of who Jesus is. I've got to start with having that healthy attitude. And I've got to be not comfortable sitting and doing nothing. I've got to step out. God, look, just like he multiplied the loaves and fishes in that little boy's life, he will multiply what you don't think you have in your life. And you've got to believe that. And you've got to step out and be Jesus to a dying world. Life application. Here we go. Do I have a proper attitude toward others? Think about people in your life that maybe you've got a bad attitude toward, and ask yourself the question, is something that I may be doing or thinking actually getting in the way of that person being all that they can be? And the second one is, am I willing to step out of my comfort zone and make a difference? Am I willing to say, Lord, I really need to step out here? But guys, here's where you need to be careful. You need to be plugged into the power source. Be careful that you don't step out of your comfort zone in your own flesh and in your own energy. Make sure that you're hearing from God before you step out. We talked about that in earlier sessions. It's very important for you to understand that here. I pray in your discussion time, guys, that God richly bless you.
Fully alive, becoming the man God intended. On Target will continue in a moment.
Men on Target Small Group Curriculum Volume 1 is now available on DVD. You can personally study or perhaps share with family and friends his life-changing study series. Vince Dacchioli shares powerful and challenging 12-minute video sessions followed by insightful, thought-provoking discussion starters. This foundational module covers topics like, who is God? The God who is versus the God I want. What does God want from me? The 3 unalterable facts and how to really experience and know God. Volume 1 is the first 8-session module of the Men on Target video curriculum. This interactive DVD set is built for easy facilitation in a small group setting and is also ideal for personal study and reflection. Order your Men on Target Volume 1 DVD set for only $25 at www.otm.co. That's otm.co. Order your set today.
The following teaching is from the Men on Target Small Group Curriculum.
Here's a reminder. Last session, we talked about our attitude and our actions. And if you remember, when we got toward the end of that session, we talked about the importance of stepping out of our comfort zone. And I used the illustration of the little boy with the loaves and fishes. You remember that? I told the story of how that went back then. Of course, we all know how it went, but how might that have gone had it happened today? And we talked about the fact that that little boy obviously didn't think he had what it takes, but Jesus didn't care what that little boy thought he had. Jesus was saying, little boy, I know you don't think you have what it takes, but you need to trust me, and you need to step out with what you do have and trust me to multiply. How often do we not do that because we really don't trust the Lord at that level? But that little boy ended up trusting God, and he stepped out, and what did Jesus do? He multiplied those loaves and fishes. And the bottom line of that is that God is not looking, listen, he's not looking for your ability, men, because I got news for you. None of us are able. He's looking for your obedience. He's looking for you to stay close to him, step out of your comfort zone, and trust him to do the multiplication. But as I said in the last session, make sure that you've got the right relationship with Jesus before you do that, because there's a fine line between trusting God and trusting your own flesh. So, in this session, we're going to be talking about what is my motive. Guys, this is a very personal session for me, and let me tell you why. I actually inserted this session into this curriculum just recently with the group of local men that I deal with every week. And I did it because of an experience I had in prayer with God. Let me share it with you. I made a commitment to my men some time back that I was going to start getting up every morning from now on at 5 o'clock, and I'm spending from 5 to 8 o'clock, 3 hours every day, reading the Word, praying and praising God. Guys, I never thought I'd ever do something like this, but it is changing my life, literally. It is amazing how much closer I feel and how much more of God's presence I feel in my life. Years ago, God did share with me, Vince, if you want to understand more of my perspective, you're going to have to first experience a greater awareness of my presence. And I thought, wow, what a profound thing for God to say to me. So it was in the midst of one of those prayer times, and I asked God this question. I said, God, am I becoming the man you intended? And I don't know how you men hear God, but for me, I know I'm hearing God when he shares something back with me that my mind would have never thought of. And that's exactly what happened to me on that occasion. The answer to that question was no. And I thought, whoa, Lord, please help me understand what you're saying to me. I'm not becoming the man you intended. And I got this sense that the Lord wasn't displeased with me necessarily. He was proud that I had made some progress, but he was saying to me, Vince, there are still some things in your life that you need to get control of, and you're not there yet. And he drew my attention to a book I read many, many years ago, written by a man named Larry Crabb. The title is The Marriage Builder. And by the way, I still believe it's probably one of the best books on marriage that you'll ever find. I remember reading that book, and I remember one thing stuck out in that book. Larry Crabb says this. He says, in all human interaction, you are doing one of two things and one of two things only. You are either ministering or you are manipulating. Ministering or manipulating. He uses the example of a guy walking up to his wife after dinner and slipping his arm around her waist, and saying, honey, you look beautiful tonight. And Larry would say, that man is either ministering to his wife with no other motive in mind, or, and then when I say or, usually a group of men will start laughing because they know what the or is. They're that guy's trying to set her up for a romantic evening, later. And so in Proverbs 16:2, it says this, all a man's ways seem innocent to him, but the motives are weighed by the Lord. What is the motive? Well, what happened is after that experience, I went to my calendar and I looked back over the last 2 weeks. And over the last 2 weeks, I looked at every meeting that was on my calendar, and I asked myself this question. At that time, at that meeting, when I sent that email out, wrote that letter, made that phone call, if I were to go back and ask myself the question, what was my motive? I was embarrassed because it looked like about 80% of the time or more, my motive was self-serving. My motive was manipulation, not ministry. And let me caution you guys at this point. I'm not saying that there aren't some times where the manipulation part, it can even be for good causes. I'm not saying that that's necessarily always wrong. What I'm saying is I didn't often have the other person in mind and what I could do to really help them or minister to them. It was more self-serving. So what I did, from that point forward, I started looking at my meetings that I was going to have, and I began deliberately laying down my agenda in an attempt to just look the other person in the eye and just think about how to minister to them. And guys, I can't tell you how many times I've done this. And what happens is eventually the conversation comes around, and you don't think the Lord knows what we need? He knows what we need. He'll take care of us as long as our heart is right and our approach to people is more ministry than manipulation. I remember years ago, I really wanted a Harley Davidson motorcycle. And by the way, for those of you who ride motorcycles, if it's not a Harley, it's technically not a motorcycle. You just need to know that. I mean, anyway, so I wanted this Harley Davidson motorcycle, and I had talked my wife into it for 2 years. For 2 years, I kept convincing my wife. I kept naming all the Christian leaders, these famous people like Graham's son rides a motorcycle. Pat Morley was riding a motorcycle back then. I think Chuck Swindoll rode a motorcycle. Honey, all these guys have motorcycles. I need a motorcycle. And she agreed. But she said, if we ever have the money, you can do that. Well, I came into some money years after that, and I said, can I go buy my motorcycle now? And she says, well, grudgingly, she said, okay. But I manipulated her. for about a year and a half to 2 years to let me buy this Harley Davidson motorcycle. I had it all picked out, guys. I had it all scoped out. It was on the showroom floor. I had all the nuts and bolts. I knew exactly what I wanted it to look like, and I had the place in the garage picked out, and I was so excited. And the day came for us to go get it, okay? We went down. My daughters were very upset at me, by the way. They did not want me to have a motorcycle. But my wife, she said, okay. You okay? After I manipulated her for 2 years, she said, okay, but I didn't know this. We went down to pick it up. Got there, the guy filled out the paperwork, and he said, well, we're going to have to clean the bike up and get it ready for you. It has to go through some prep, so it's not going to be ready for a couple hours. I said, oh, man. He says, well, you come back in a couple hours, I'll have it ready for you. So we left. And guys, in the 2 hours that we were gone doing errands, my wife, on the way back to the dealer, fell apart in the car. She started weeping uncontrollably. And I said, Cindy, what's wrong? And she shared with me from her heart that she was scared. She did not want me to have that motorcycle. I get emotional even now when I'm telling the story. And I'm sitting there in the car as a man. I pulled off the side of the road. I had to make a decision, guys. What am I going to do at this point? Am I going to minister to my wife, or am I going to continue to manipulate her? Because I could have gone and picked it up and taken it home and plowed through. But I made a decision, and I'm so glad I did. I said, honey, if that's the way you feel, we're not going to get the motorcycle. And I went back, canceled the paperwork, went home, went down to my basement, and I must have cried for 2 hours because my heart was broken. I wanted it. But guys, it was the right thing to do. I did not realize how much I had been manipulating her into letting me do this. So what I did after that experience with the Lord is I went out and I had some bracelets made. And if you guys are interested in these bracelets and you want to request one, go to otm.co, and I think we're going to have them there on our website. But I wear this bracelet now. I don't know if you can see this, but on the screen it'll show you what it looks like. It says WIMM, and it's from Proverbs 16:2, which we read a moment ago. And it says, what is my motive on the other side? I wear this, guys, every single day of my life. It never comes off my wrist. I bathe with it. I take it everywhere I go, and I can't tell you how many times throughout the day I'll put my hand on this as a reminder that what I'm about to do or say, why am I about to do or say this? What is my motive? Guys, I want to tell you something. If we really asked ourselves this question more often, not only we would get in a lot less trouble, but we'd be a lot better person for displaying Jesus like we've been talking about in these last sessions. We'd be a lot closer to being Jesus than typically the way we navigate life. Now, what is the life implication for all of this? If I do not allow God to search me every day and reveal my hidden motives, I will not become the man God intended. It's that simple, guys. My friend Coach Mack would say, every day you need to be searched, fed, and led. I love that. You need to let the Lord search your heart, get the sin out of your life, let Him reveal to you the stuff that's in you that is not healthy. You need to be fed by the Word of God every single day, and you need to be led by the Holy Spirit. That's our goal, guys. Let God search your heart and your motives every single day. Life application, well, here's a couple of discussion questions. As I examine some of the recent decisions I've made, how would I rate on the scale of ministry versus manipulation? If ministering to the person is over here and manipulation is over here, where would you have been in any of those circumstances where you've been with others? And guys, listen, if you find yourself not being on the right side of that scale, don't feel bad about it. Just admit it, move on, let God search you, and in the future, either wear the band or have it somewhere etched in your mind and in your heart that you need to ask yourself that question often. What is my motive? And then number two, what practical steps can I take to improve in this area? And maybe that's one of them. You know, maybe it's wearing a band, or maybe it's having a sign. I used to have a sign on my desk years ago that just simply said, what is your motive? And I'm putting that sign back on my desk today. So those are your discussion questions. And guys, listen, I'm going to pray that God really blesses you from this information, because I think it's really, really important.
On Target with Vince Dacchioli will continue in a moment.
Are you thinking of starting a small group or possibly a new men's study at your church? Where to start? OnTarget has made it simple and easy. OnTarget has developed a detailed leadership training video series that will walk you through each important step to facilitate a small group. Each training session is only 12 minutes. Topics include a focus on leader qualifications and responsibilities, a teaching on the 4 pillars of leadership, and 4 practical role-play sessions on discussion group dynamics. This unique leadership training will lay a firm foundation to launch men's ministry and small groups in your church. Every pastor and leader should have this practical leadership series in their resource library. This 12-session video training series is now available as a DVD set. Order the OnTarget Institute Leadership Training DVD sets for $50 at www.otm.co. That's otm.co.
Welcome back, men. In this show, we dealt with 2 very important things: understanding my attitude and my actions, and what is my motive. If you recall, under the attitude and actions part, we talked about that lawn chair pilot. I know that's a funny story, but the idea is, are we getting out of our comfort zone? Are we stepping out even when we don't think we have enough? Jesus is saying, I know you don't think you have what it takes, but you know what? Go with what you have. I'll take care of the rest. And then we kind of ended with, what is my motive? And I got to tell you guys, I'm really kind of saddened about this, but I never did get my Harley. That story I will never forget as long as I live. I was a professional manipulator, men, and I'm not very proud of it. So I want to encourage you guys to really, really pay attention as we move forward now, because our next show, we're going to be reviewing the last 4 shows that we've done, and we're going to be giving you guys a peek at the next 4 programs so that you can have a little bit of a preview of what you can look forward to. And until then, I want to remind you, men, of how much at OnTarget we really love you guys. Go to the website, otm.co, and if you've got a prayer request or you just want to talk, find a way on that website, get to the place where you can connect with me, and we will get back to you. We love you guys. Thank you. Can't wait for the next show.
OnTarget Ministries is on the air thanks to the generous support of our faithful partners and friends. Your pay-it-forward gift of any amount makes it possible to get this practical discipleship teaching to men around the globe. Please send your tax-deductible donation to OnTarget Ministries at P.O. Box 1654, Monument, Colorado 80132. That's OnTarget Ministries, P.O. Box 1654, Monument, Colorado 80132. Or you can donate online at otm.co. Again, that's otm.co. Please sign up for our free emails at otm.co. That's www.otm.co.